Hello and welcome to the Oneapp Academy podcast. This is episode 5. I'm your host Abby, and today we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for many of us, and that's what to do if you fail an exam. So the exams that we'll be talking about are mainly certification exams, but we'll also be talking about all different types of exams, so exams at college, at university, because they all affect us in the same way. So just before we start, it's important to highlight the fact that in my journey to becoming a consultant, I have taken lots of different exams, mostly certification exams. Now, some of them I will pass first time and others I won't. Other exams I failed 2 times and 3 times. So I'm just here to share my experiences with the whole process of taking the exam, the journey, the failure, and just what to do if you find yourself in a position where you fail. So the first section is talking about how to deal with that initial feeling of failure. So let's talk about the emotional side. Now, failing an exam can bring lots of emotions, a mix of emotions like disappointment, frustration, and even embarrassment. So if you are completing exams because you have to, so maybe because of your job, maybe it's a requirement in order for you to advance in your career. So there's going to be a big spotlight on you and this exam. And especially if your workplace are paying for that exam, it just puts even more pressure on you. But if you feel feelings of frustration or embarrassment, then that's okay, because at the end of the day, you are human. So let's look at a few steps to help process those initial feelings. So the first thing to do is acknowledge how you feel. It's okay to be upset. We all tend to find ourselves in a position where we don't get the result that we want. So try not to suppress those feelings. I find that when you suppress the feelings, then it just builds up and, you find yourself in a position where you're feeling very negative. The next thing to process your emotion is to avoid any self-doubt or self-criticism. For me, I tend to have a little voice inside my head saying things like, oh, you're not smart enough, you'll never succeed. So I try to catch that voice and really challenge it. And it's really a moment to, help understand why you're hearing that voice. What is it telling you? Why is it telling you that? And to overcome that, just remember that this is just a moment in that journey to becoming certified or to passing your exam. It's not really the whole story. Also, give yourself a time limit, because it's very easy to be down for a long period of time. It's important to say, look, after this week, at the end of this week, I'm going to, pull myself back up and, start shifting out of that mindset. And I'm going to start going into a different mindset, which is more positive and it's more about action and improvement. So let's look at reflection. So let's see how we can reflect on what went wrong. So once the emotions have settled, then it's now time to ask why. So reflection is key to overcoming these challenges. So you can start by asking very honest questions. So questions like, did I manage my time as effectively as I should have done? And also, did I really understand the exam format? Did I understand the syllabus? And this is an area that catches me out. Lots of times I will assume that I know what to study, but most of the time we don't until we actually read the exam syllabus. And also think about the difficulty of the exam. Did you underestimate how difficult it was going to be? Maybe if you spent more time focusing on the syllabus and looking at the topics that you found to be more challenging, then you would improve and potentially pass. Also think about external factors that might be affecting your performance. We also have, different things going on in terms of our personal lives. There's challenges at work, there's personal challenges, and sometimes that can really affect your focus. Now, the great thing about certification exams is that you can always rebook them, you can always reschedule them. So if you are experiencing any of these types of challenges, then maybe look at saying, right, let's do the exam another time, a time when I have more capacity to focus on it. So now let's look at taking action to improve. So now that we've reflected, let's talk about some solutions. So I'm going to just provide some steps to help you bounce back from a failed exam. So these are practical steps. So the first one would be to review the exam. So if you can, try to go through the exam itself and try to identify what topics did you struggle with. I know that with the Oracle certification exams, you tend to get an exam report at the end on the Cert View page, and that's usually available after about an hour or two of taking the exam. And it won't really go into detail about the specific questions that you got wrong, but it will talk about the topics, the topics where you had a failed exam. And I think that's just really to help you to revise those topics a lot harder, rather than just revising that particular question. So try to go through those topics. Don't worry too much about the topics that you got right. Always put your focus on the topics that you got wrong. It's very easy to go over the stuff that you know, but we tend to not provide enough time focusing on the areas that we don't know. So obviously you know the things that you got right, so just logically have the approach of just focusing on the topics that you struggle with. If you can seek feedback, this is another useful tip. If you have a trainer, or if you have a lecturer, a professor, or if you have somebody at work who is a senior and they have more understanding of the exam than you, then it's a good opportunity to just have a chat with them and get some advice, get some tips. If you are working with an instructor, then just set some time aside to have a Q&A for about an hour, and have them review your study plans and maybe try to just revise those study plans to make them more specific to the exam that you're doing. And speaking of study plans, this is another really important one, because with certification exams, we tend to just read off the screen when it comes to practicing. So we read guides, we watch videos, which is great, but there is also that need to include some writing, So if you go back to when you were at uni or college and you had to write down lots of information and notes. So try to create a study plan, a written study plan, which will help to break down all of the topic areas into chunks. So think about the timings when you have your next exam. So if the next exam is in a month's time, then you might be able to break down your topics into 4 weeks, and then you can work towards achieving those topics each week. And also try to practice under exam conditions as well if you can. Now, lots of exams nowadays are all proctor type exams. So these exams will be virtual and they'll be taken in the comfort of your own home. But some of you may be taking exams which are attended on site. So you have to go to a training centre or some type of establishment where you have to sit down and take the exams under different conditions. So if you can just find a way to recreate those conditions, so it could mean going to a library or just booking out a meeting room at work, just so that you're not in the same environment where you're studying. And it just makes you feel a little bit more secure working in that environment. It gets you comfortable with it, and there's no distractions as well. And also think about your mindset. So this is the next item. So as you prepare to retake the exam or move on to other challenges, you might find that your mindset is still not where it needs to be. So mindset really does matter. So the first thing is to embrace what people call nowadays the growth mindset. And what you're doing here is you're looking at ways that you can learn and grow, and you're seeing failure as an opportunity to grow. So failure is a normal part of achieving success. You can't achieve success without it. And lots of people don't talk about when they fail exams, which is something that I find a little frustrating, because you might have a team and all of those people have taken exams, but they won't talk about when they failed. They only talk about when they passed. And I get that, because you are in a working environment and you want to succeed and you want to show people that you are successful. But when you don't hear things from different sides, then it just makes you feel a little bit insecure. So it's important to understand that even the best of the best fail, and the reason why they're so good at what they're doing, the reason why they're so knowledgeable, is because they've had to go back and do that study and work really hard to learn the application. The other thing about mindset, and the reason why it's important to have the correct mindset, is to understand that when you're taking a certification exam, it's not just to pass, and this is really important here. You're taking the exam because you want to be good and knowledgeable about the topic that you are taking the exam in. When you go out to a customer and you're on site as a consultant and you're being asked questions about the application, then the worst thing to do is to be certified and you don't really have any feedback or any solutions. You don't really know how to optimize the application that you are consulting in. So the way I look at it is, you take certification exams because you really want to learn and understand that particular application. If you take the exam just to pass, then that's great. It looks great on your CV, but it doesn't really give you that value, and it doesn't give you that confidence to sit in amongst people who you are supporting and provide really good advice. There's nothing better than having the knowledge and being able to be clear about how something works, especially on demand. For me, that's a sign of a very knowledgeable consultant. Also, just staying on the topic of mindset, also consistency is important. So practice on a consistent basis. So over time, you find that as you get used to doing the same thing over and over again, you get used to it. So when it comes to revision and practice, then just try to be consistent. It won't be forever. Obviously, once you pass, then you can have a break. But for now, this is your priority. So just try to be consistent. And if you have any wins, try to celebrate them. So if you do a practice exam and you score a higher score than you did before, then, celebrate it. Give yourself a pat on the back, and just see that you are improving. So let's talk about moving forward. So just remember that failing an exam is just a temporary setback. It's not a permanent roadblock. It doesn't reflect on who you are as a person. And each attempt is a chance to grow. It's a chance to redefine your skills and also build resilience, which is something that isn't really talked about much these days. Resilience is being able to just keep trying and keep going until you reach the end. It's really fighting to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. Even the fact that you're listening to this podcast, it shows that you are already taking steps to move forward, and that's something to be proud of. So that brings me to the end of this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, then please share with anyone who might benefit or anyone who needs any encouragement. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any topics that you want me to raise in the future. Until next time, remember, failure is just feedback. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep going. You've got this.